Close your eyes and try to remember age 2. Nothing, right? That's strange, because the version of you that laughed, cried, felt fear, and learned how the entire world worked was very much alive. Your brain recorded those experiences, and yet you can't remember a single one. Here's what nobody tells you. Your brain didn't forget those years, it destroyed them. And the reason why will completely change how you think about yourself. Think about what that actually means. You are walking around right now with a black hole in your mind, a gap that swallows the first 2 to 3 years of your entire existence. Every human being on this planet has this same black hole. Every person you've ever met, every person who has ever lived, has a version of this silence inside them. Scientists call it infantile amnesia. Sigmund Freud was the first to name it, back in 1905. But even he couldn't fully explain it. And for most of the 20th century, neither could anyone else. So, where did those memories go? Were they deleted? Did they fade? Were they ever really there at all? The answer requires going inside your brain. And what you find there will change how you think about who you actually are. Your brain has a structure called the hippocampus, a small, curved region buried deep inside your skull. Think of it as the engine of memory. Every experience you have, a conversation, a moment of fear, a smell that takes you somewhere, the hippocampus takes that raw experience and converts it into something you can actually keep, something you can replay years later. But in infants, this engine is severely underdeveloped. The connections between the hippocampus and the rest of the brain are still being built. A region called the dentate gyrus, which acts as the primary gateway for new memories, isn't fully wired until somewhere between ages 2 and 4. So your infant brain could form short-term memories. It just couldn't move them into long-term storage the way an adult brain does. But here's the thing, that's only half the story, and the other half is far stranger. We know babies can form memories. This isn't a theory. In the 1980s, psychologist Carolyn Rovi Collier at Rutgers University ran one of the most elegant experiments in developmental psychology. She tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a mobile hanging above their crib. The babies quickly figured out that kicking their leg made the mobile move. They loved it. Then she took the mobile away. Days later, she brought it back, and the babies immediately started kicking. Wait, really? A baby that couldn't speak, couldn't walk, couldn't tell you their own name, remembered. Not as a story, not as something they could describe, but something deep inside their brain had held on to that connection. 2-month-olds held the memory for days. 6-month-olds held it for weeks. So infant brains can store memories. They can retrieve them. But by adulthood, every single trace is gone. For decades, scientists couldn't explain why, until 2014, when 2 neuroscientists in Toronto discovered something that turned the entire field upside down. Sheena Jocelyn and Paul Frankland at the Hospital for Sick Children had a hypothesis that sounded almost absurd when they first proposed it. What if the very process that builds your brain is also what destroys your memories? Here's what they meant. In the first years of life, your hippocampus is producing new neurons at an extraordinary rate. This process, called neurogenesis, is essential. Those new brain cells are what wire up the circuits you'll use for the rest of your life. It is literally how you become a functioning human being. But Jocelyn and Franklin suspected there was a cost. Every time a new neuron integrates into an existing memory circuit, it disrupts the connections that were already there, the connections that were holding your memories. To test this, they ran experiments on mice. When they artificially increased neurogenesis in adult mice that had already learned things, those mice started forgetting what they had learned. And when they slowed neurogenesis in infant mice, those infants held onto their memories far longer than normal. The results, published in the journal Science, pointed to a conclusion nobody expected. Your baby brain wasn't too weak to hold memories. It was too busy growing. The same explosion of new neurons that built your mind also overwrote the memories stored inside it. Your earliest experiences weren't lost because they were never saved. They were lost because your brain kept building new rooms and tearing down the old walls in the process. But there's one more layer. And this might be the strangest part of all. To form what scientists call autobiographical memory, the kind where you are the main character, where things are happening to you, where you can close your eyes and actually be there again, you need something most people never think about. You need a self. You need to understand that you exist, that you are a separate person, that experiences are happening to you, not just around you. Developmental psychologists Mark Howe and Mary Courage argued in the 1990s that this is a critical missing piece. Before roughly 18 to 24 months of age, infants don't recognize themselves as distinct individuals. The test for this is beautifully simple. Put a dot of rouge on a baby's nose. Place them in front of a mirror. Before 18 months, the baby reaches toward the mirror. They think they're looking at another child. After 18 months, they reach up and touch their own nose. That moment, that first flicker of self-recognition, tracks almost exactly with the earliest age at which autobiographical memories can form. In other words, you can't remember being a baby, partly because there was no you yet. Not in the way you experience yourself now. There was no narrator inside your head, packaging experiences into a story belonging to a person called you. Which raises a question that might genuinely disturb you. If you had no continuous sense of self, and the brain that held your earliest experiences physically rewired itself beyond recognition, is the baby in those old photographs actually you? Or is it someone else entirely? Someone who lived in your body, but whose mind was literally disassembled and rebuilt, neuron by neuron, into the person you became. And then there's language. Developmental psychologist Catherine Nelson spent years studying how children form lasting memories. Her conclusion was sharp and surprising. Language doesn't just describe our memories, it structures them. Before you could speak, your experiences were encoded as raw sensory impressions, sounds, textures, emotions, flashes of light. But without words to organize them, those impressions had no framework to attach to. Like water with no container, they existed in the moment, then dissolved. Once children begin speaking, and especially once adults start having conversations with them about the past, remember when we went to the park? What happened? Their ability to form lasting memories improves dramatically. Language gives memory a skeleton. And here's where it gets fascinating. Psychologist Qi Wang at Cornell found that your culture literally determines how far back your memory reaches. In Western cultures, where parents frequently narrate their children's experiences, asking questions, building personal stories, earliest memories average around age 3.5. Among the Maori of New Zealand, whose oral tradition places extraordinary emphasis on personal history and storytelling, average first memories reach all the way back to age 2.5. In some East Asian cultures, where early childhood narratives focus less on the individual child, first memories start closer to age 4 or later. The culture you were raised in helped decide what you remember. Someone else's storytelling habits shaped the edges of your own mind. Now here's what makes all of this deeply personal. Think about your earliest memory, the one you're most certain of. A birthday maybe, a room, a face, a feeling. Here's an uncomfortable question. Is it actually real? Memory researcher Elizabeth Loftus at UC Irvine spent decades showing that our earliest memories are also our least reliable. Many people's first memories are actually constructed from photographs they've seen, or stories their parents repeated so many times that the brain eventually built a visual experience around the words. It feels like a memory, but it's closer to a film your brain produced, based on a script someone else gave you. In one of her studies, Loftus was able to implant completely false childhood memories into adult participants simply by telling them a convincing story about something that had happened to them as children. Within weeks, they were describing the fake memory in vivid, specific detail, completely convinced it was real. Memory is not a recording, it is a reconstruction, rebuilt from scratch, every single time you reach for it. So here is what actually happened to your earliest years. Your hippocampus wasn't ready to build long-term memories, and even when it started to, the flood of new neurons tore through the circuits holding them. You had no concept of self to anchor experiences to. You had no language to give those experiences a structure that could survive. It wasn't one thing, it was everything, all at once. But here is what nobody tells you. Those years didn't disappear. They went underground. You don't remember being held, but your nervous system does. You don't remember whether your world felt safe or chaotic, but your stress response does. You don't remember the emotional patterns of your earliest environment, but your brain's wiring absolutely does. The way you feel when someone ignores you. The way your body relaxes when you're truly safe. The things that make you feel small, and the things that make you feel powerful. So much of that was written in years you can no longer reach. You didn't get to keep the memories, but you kept everything they built. And here is the final truth, the one that puts all of this together. Your brain wasn't failing during those first years. It wasn't too weak, too simple, too young. It was doing something far more important than remembering. It was becoming you. And that process, the neurogenesis, the rewiring, the slow emergence of a self, required quite literally destroying the person who came before. The baby in those photographs lived an entire life, felt real things, was shaped by real moments. And then that baby was taken apart, rebuilt, and handed over to you, without a single memory of the transformation. You are the person they became. And the most haunting question isn't why you can't remember being a baby. It's this. Who were you before you became you? Think deeper. If this made you think, you know where to find more.